There comes a stage in life when certain questions no longer press as hard as they once did. Not because answers have been found, but because the urgency to answer them has quietly faded. In the later years of life, many people notice that their sense of what matters begins to shift on its own. Not through effort, not through decision. It happens gradually, like a room rearranging itself when no one is watching. Things that once took up a great deal of space begin to loosen their hold. Priorities that once felt fixed start to feel negotiable. Not wrong, just less necessary. This change rarely arrives with clarity. There is no moment of realization where everything becomes obvious. Instead, it appears in small ways. A conversation that no longer needs to be continued. A responsibility that feels heavier than it once did. An expectation that quietly slips away without resistance. For much of life, importance is defined externally, by schedules, by roles, by what others notice or depend on. These definitions serve a purpose for a long time. They help structure the years when building and proving feel essential. But as time passes, those structures begin to soften. In later years, it becomes easier to notice how much energy certain things require, how much attention, how much emotional weight. Some of what once felt worthwhile now feels costly. Not unbearable, just unnecessary. This is not regret, it is recognition. There is often a growing preference for what feels steady rather than impressive, for what feels honest rather than complete, for what can be lived with comfortably rather than achieved. Moments of quiet gain importance not because they are dramatic, but because they are undemanding. Familiar routines begin to feel more valuable than ambitious plans. Not because ambition disappears, but because it no longer defines worth. There is also a subtle change in how time is felt. The future no longer stretches endlessly ahead. It becomes closer, more contained. This does not bring fear as often as expected. More often, it brings focus. When time feels more limited, attention becomes more selective. There is less desire to spend it on what drains or unsettles. Less patience for noise, for tension, for obligations that do not feel aligned. This selectiveness is not withdrawal, it is refinement. In the later years of life, people often find themselves keeping fewer things close. Fewer arguments, fewer explanations, fewer expectations of themselves and others. What remains tends to feel more solid, more reliable. There is relief in this narrowing, a sense that life no longer needs to be carried all at once, that it can be held in smaller, steadier pieces. This is not about deciding what truly matters. It is about noticing what remains when effort falls away. What stays present without being defended. What continues to feel right even when no one is watching. In this quiet adjustment, there is no need for judgment. The past does not need to be reinterpreted. Earlier priorities were not mistakes. They belonged to a different time. Now, life simply asks to be lived from where it is. And from this place, many people begin to sense that what matters most is not something to be claimed or named, but something already settling gently into view. As the years pass, it becomes easier to see how certain things gradually lose their weight. Not suddenly, and not because they are rejected, but because they no longer fit as naturally as they once did. There was a time when being busy felt meaningful. Full calendars, constant responsibilities, and long lists of things to manage gave structure to the day. They offered a sense of purpose, even when they were tiring. Saying yes felt like participation, like proof of being needed. In the later years of life, that relationship with busyness begins to change. The body notices first. Fatigue arrives sooner. Recovery takes longer. But alongside these physical changes, there is also a quieter emotional response. A question that surfaces gently. Is this still worth carrying? Many obligations that once felt unquestionable start to feel optional. Not because they were unimportant, but because their importance belonged to a different chapter. There is less willingness to stretch oneself then, simply to meet expectations that no longer feel personal. Competition often fades in this way as well. The need to compare paths, achievements, or timelines slowly loosens. There is less interest in measuring progress against others, less energy spent noticing who is ahead or behind. This does not happen out of bitterness or disappointment. It happens out of familiarity. After enough years, patterns repeat themselves. The same races are run, the same comparisons resurface. Eventually, they begin to feel predictable rather than motivating. Image and appearance also tend to shift in importance. Not in the sense of neglect, but in the sense of honesty. There is less effort spent presenting a certain version of oneself, less concern about how things appear from the outside. Comfort takes precedence over impression. Even opinions begin to soften. Arguments that once felt necessary now feel heavy. The desire to convince or be convinced loses urgency. Conversations become simpler, quieter, more selective. There is a noticeable change in how energy is protected. Emotional boundaries become clearer without needing to be declared. Some interactions feel nourishing, others feel draining. The difference is recognized quickly, without analysis. In earlier years, this kind of selectiveness might have felt selfish or irresponsible. Now, it feels practical, kind even, toward oneself. As these shifts take place, there is often a sense of things falling away naturally, not being taken away, but slipping out of reach. Certain expectations are no longer met, and surprisingly, nothing collapses as a result. Life continues. Relationships adjust. The world moves on. What remains after this quiet shedding often feels lighter, less crowded. There is more room for rest, for small pleasures, for moments that do not need to justify their presence. This process is not dramatic. It does not come with announcements or resolutions. It is felt most clearly in how the day feels at the end, whether it leaves a residue of strain or a sense of ease. In the later years of life, many people begin to value ease more openly, not because effort is avoided, but because effort is chosen more carefully. What slowly becomes clear is that letting go of certain priorities does not mean losing direction. It means allowing direction to become simpler. And in that simplicity, there is often a quiet steadiness, a sense that life, when carried more lightly, still holds its shape, and perhaps holds it better than before. As some priorities loosen their hold, others begin to reveal themselves more clearly, not because they are named or defined, but because they remain when so much else has fallen away. In the later years of life, closeness often takes on a different meaning. It is no longer measured by frequency or intensity, but by ease. by how it feels to sit with someone without needing to explain oneself, by how little effort it takes to simply be present. Relationships that endure tend to be the ones that ask the least, not because they lack depth, but because they are grounded in familiarity. There is room for silence, room for difference, room for days when nothing much is said at all. Time spent with such people feels restorative rather than consuming. There is no performance required, no version of oneself to maintain, just a shared understanding that has grown quietly over years. The same is true of places. Certain environments begin to matter more than others. Spaces that feel calm, familiar, predictable in a comforting way. A chair by the window, a familiar walk. A room that holds memories without demanding attention. These places offer something subtle but important. They allow the body to relax, the mind to settle. They do not ask for effort. They simply receive. Daily rhythms also become more meaningful. The order of the day, the way morning unfolds, the way evening comes to rest. These patterns create a sense of continuity that feels increasingly valuable. There is satisfaction in knowing what the day will likely hold, not because surprise is unwelcome, but because predictability brings a sense of safety. The nervous system no longer needs to stay alert. In this steadier rhythm, small comforts grow in importance. Warm light, a familiar sound, a routine that does not need to be improved. These details offer reassurance without demanding attention. What remains important in the later years of life often has little to do with ambition. It has more to do with alignment, with how well life fits the shape it has taken. There is also a growing appreciation for honesty. Not dramatic honesty, but quiet truthfulness. Saying less, explaining less, allowing things to be what they are without polishing or correcting them. This honesty extends inward as well, toward one's own limitations, toward changing energy, toward what feels possible now and what no longer does. There is less resistance to these acknowledgments, less judgment attached to them. In earlier years, such acceptance might have felt like giving up. Now, it feels like clarity. Attention naturally moves toward what can be lived with comfortably, what supports steadiness rather than excitement, what brings a sense of rightness without needing to be celebrated. There is no need to elevate these things into ideals. They do not ask to be defended or shared. They simply feel appropriate. As this understanding deepens, life begins to feel less scattered. Fewer threads are being pulled at once. What remains is held more gently, but with greater care. In the later years of life, what truly matters often reveals itself not through effort, but through absence, through noticing what is no longer missed, through feeling which parts of life continue to feel essential, even when everything else grows quieter. And in that quiet clarity, many people find themselves living closer to what feels real, without needing to name it or explain why. As life continues to simplify, a different kind of order begins to emerge. Not the kind that is planned or designed, but one that settles naturally when fewer things are being held at once. In the later years of life, there is often less interest in rearranging everything. Big changes feel less necessary. What matters more is how the existing pieces fit together, whether they feel balanced, whether they feel livable. This is where priorities quietly realign, not through decision, but through repetition, through days that reveal what continues to feel right, and what quietly exhausts. There is a noticeable shift from accumulation to maintenance, from adding to preserving, from expanding to caring for what already exists. This applies not only to possessions, but to relationships, routines, and inner states. Energy becomes a guiding factor, not in a limiting way, but in an honest one. There is a clearer sense of what draws energy in and what drains it away. Over time, this awareness shapes choices more than ideals ever did. Moments that offer calm begin to outweigh moments that offer excitement. Stability feels more valuable than novelty. This does not mean curiosity disappears. It simply becomes more selective. There is also a gentler relationship with imperfection. Things no longer need to be resolved or improved to be acceptable. A day can be incomplete and still feel whole. A relationship can be imperfect and still feel meaningful. This acceptance does not come from lowering standards. It comes from understanding what effort is worth. From knowing that not everything benefits from being fixed. In earlier years, meaning was often tied to momentum, to movement, to progress. In the later years of life, meaning becomes more closely tied to presence, to being fully where one is without needing to justify it. This presence has a grounding effect. It anchors attention in what is tangible, what is near, what can be felt rather than imagined. It reduces the pull of distant concerns and unresolved possibilities. There is also a deeper tolerance for ambiguity. Not everything needs to make sense. Not every question needs an answer. Some things can remain open without causing discomfort. This openness creates a sense of spaciousness. Life feels less crowded with expectations. There is room for quiet moments that do not serve a purpose beyond themselves. In this space, the idea of what truly matters becomes less rigid. It is not a list to be checked off. It is a feeling of alignment that appears when life is not being pushed in directions it no longer wants to go. Many people find that when they stop trying to define what matters, it becomes easier to recognize it. It shows up in moments of ease, in the absence of strain, in the sense that nothing essential is being neglected. This way of living does not require explanation. It does not ask for validation. It feels complete on its own terms. In the later years of life, priorities settle into place not because they have been chosen carefully, but because they have been lived with long enough to reveal their true weight. What remains is not grand or dramatic. It is steady, reliable, enough. And in that steadiness, life continues with less effort, carried by a quiet understanding that what truly matters has already found its place. As the later years of life continue to unfold, there is often a feeling of things settling where they belong. Not perfectly and not permanently, but comfortably enough to rest for a while. What truly matters no longer feels like a question that needs answering. It feels more like a quiet awareness that accompanies the day. It shows up in how easily one moves through familiar spaces, in how gently time is treated, in how little explanation is required. There is less need to hold everything together, less need to stay alert to every possibility. Life no longer feels like something that must be managed carefully at all times. It feels more like something that can be lived alongside, without constant adjustment. In this stage, priorities are not declared, they are felt. They are present in the choices that are no longer difficult to make, in the invitations that are declined without guilt, in the moments that are allowed to pass without comment. There is comfort in knowing that not everything needs attention, that some things can simply remain as they are. That peace does not require agreement, and meaning does not require effort. Days may feel quieter now, but they are not empty. They are filled with ordinary moments that carry a quiet completeness, a familiar routine, a shared silence, a sense of ease that does not need to be explained. There is no rush to define this period of life, no need to frame it as a conclusion or a summary. It is simply another way of being, shaped by time and experience, moving at its own pace. Some things that once felt essential may now feel distant. Others feel closer than ever. This shifting is not something to correct, it is something to notice. As evening approaches and the day draws gently to a close, there is often a sense that nothing important has been missed, that life, lived with fewer demands, still holds enough, more than enough. What truly matters in the later years of life does not announce itself loudly. It does not ask to be defended or shared. It rests quietly in the background, steady and familiar. And in that quiet, there is room. Room to breathe. Room to sit with the day as it is. Room to let life continue without needing to decide what it all means.